Well, here we go. No, not quite. I don't like the way that this works, where I have to pull the screen down in order to get the fulcrum balance just right. Because for a split second, you see my rotund torso, and then you get the actual image that I intend to project. Anyway, this is the vlog for December 12 or 13. Is it December 12th? 12/12/2018. And I'm going to talk about a variety of points. First of all, sleep. I walked today, and I like walking because usually the act of walking provides me with natural fatigue that helps me sleep. I've probably talked a little bit about this before, but I sleep better. I sleep more consistently over the course of the entire night, and I'm not as easily woken by small things, especially in the morning, other people in the house getting up, making coffee, that kind of thing. So I value exercise, if only for that reason. I haven't lost a lot of weight, as my stocky torso has indicated. I'm losing a little, but mostly I just feel better. When I sleep better, I feel better in general. The soreness that I feel is actually sort of pleasant at this point, which is not to say that I am a masochist, but if you talk to people who exercise and that the good pain, there is something there. There's an addictive quality to exercise, and you associate a certain pain with a feeling of accomplishment, which is a positive thing. It encourages you to exercise more. You associate that soreness as a good thing, and you come to enjoy it and sometimes even look for it. I'm not advocating going out and getting beaten up or having someone hurt you on purpose, unless you really are a masochist, in which case you do you. But now I'm going to switch the gear a little bit and talk about fascism. Good segue, yeah? Okay, so this morning, somebody linked this wonderful bit of stand-up talking about Richard Spencer, how he went on this... Richard Spencer, if you don't know, is a neo-Nazi, a white supremacist who has managed to convince people that he's an upstanding citizen who just happens to be a white supremacist, even though he's a freaking Nazi. And this stand-up guy went on this little thing about how white liberals, after Richard Spencer was punched, which is great because, you know, I'll get to that in a minute, but he's talking about how white liberal, restrained liberals are going, do we really want to do this? Do we really want the answer to this problem to be violence? If you're violent to a Nazi, isn't that going to encourage more violence against Nazis? The stand-up's argument was, yeah, hopefully. I mean, why stop at one? Why don't you just keep punching fascists? And a friend of mine responding to this stand-up pointed out that it is silly for liberals to condemn violence against these people because we have made a sport, both sides, liberal and conservatives, have made a sport of beating up Nazis in media for, I'm going to get the number on this right, 78 years? Specifically. 68 years. 68 years. The date I'm coming up with is very specific. In 1940, this is important, in 1940, before America had actually entered into World War II, Timely Comics, a little company that most people these days have never heard of, but is important because it was bought by Marvel Comics, Timely Comics released a comic book character named Captain America. Captain America, on the cover of his first comic, is punching Adolf Hitler in the face, which is a well and good thing for a couple of reasons. First of all, I think all of us could stand to punch Adolf Hitler in the face if given the opportunity. I can't think of anyone in modern history more deserving of a good punch in the face than that mass murdering schmuck, but that's just me. But it's important for another reason. 1940, America had not entered World War II. America entered World War II not because of Hitler, but because America was attacked by the Japanese in the Pacific, Pearl Harbor. And that date actually happened last week. It was December 7th. And that was what really got America into the war, but we had been showing a little bit of support for the people who had been invaded in Europe by Germany and the other Axis powers, notably Italy, who was also a fascist state at that point. And Americans had been sort of reluctant to commit to fighting someone. In fact, people picketed, they protested Marvel Comics or Timely Comics' creation of the character and the portrayal of Adolf Hitler as objectively evil. And it was actually, of all people, Mayor LaGuardia who ordered protection from the police for the comic book company that had created Captain America to make sure that they could keep working without fear of violence. A little bit ironic. And you can say that this is, an example of how violence begets violence. But the thing about fascism is that if you have an totalitarian, authoritarian, I get these words mixed up. If you have a dictator who is telling you that there's only ever going to be one party from now on, his party, and he's going to do terrible things to anybody that speaks out against him, I think that's when the violence is called for. I think that's when people should take up arms and remove a villain of that nature from power, because when you are robbed of choice and control and determination of your own life, that is slavery. There's no two ways about it. We've fought wars to end slavery in this country. And we're not talking about slavery to the television, slavery to the liberal media, slavery to Facebook and its algorithms. We're talking about a man telling you how your life is going to be, whether you like it or not. That's slavery. We should never stand for it. Now, I don't want to end on such a heavy note. I want to talk about something lighter. And I'm going to talk about, as briefly as I can, because I've only got about 2.5 minutes left, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Talking about choice. Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, you start with a very small roster. And I think a lot of people are surprised by that. I think there's only 8, 10, or 12 characters unlocked by default when you start playing Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. And that's a paltry sum. That is it's less than a fifth of the total number of characters in the game. You have to unlock that many again times 4 characters to unlock the entire roster. Now, some of them are echo characters, so they behave very, very similarly to another character in the game, so they don't count, but there's still like 66 or 68 characters at this point, including Joker from Persona 5 now. And I remember when a fighting game came out that had a huge roster, and it was unlocked entirely by default. In fact, I know which game it was. Well, I know one game that it was. It was Marvel vs. Capcom 2, specifically the version that was released on Xbox Live Arcade. Now, in the original version of the Dreamcast game, which was what this version was based off of, you had to unlock each character in a very specific manner, in a very specific order. You had to beat the game a certain number of times. The developer was afraid that players would not want to spend all that time doing that, especially if they'd already done that on the Dreamcast. And so they made everything available by default. That's fine. Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, also a sequel. Also, these characters, by and large, have all appeared in previous games. So you can understand some people might be reluctant to have to go through all the work to unlock these characters. I don't think that's a bad thing necessarily. Yes, you did pay for the game. You paid for all these characters, at least not the ones that are DLC like Piranha Plant and Joker. But when you unlock a character in a fighting game, especially one that you like, maybe you already know that you're going to like them, or maybe you don't know anything about them, and it's a gift. It is like a loot box, especially sometimes the way they're presented, like Bayonetta's taking your hair down, or Fox is flying in to support you, that kind of thing, with a splash screen and a musical interlude. This is a loot box you're not paying for, which is the best kind, because it's the kind that's not technically gambling. You have all these characters, you have to unlock them through the game, but you're not giving Nintendo or any other company money for roll of the dice. That's the problem with loot box. That's what I hate about them. That's why I like Warframe so much. That's why I like a lot of games with paid DLC where you know what you're getting. I support Skyrim's DLC situation, which is a little bit weird because that stuff is optional. You don't need it to play the game. You haven't needed it for the 7 years that game has been out. But it's there if you want to spend money for it. But in the case of these fighting games, I think Nintendo made a good decision. Maybe the way you unlock characters is a little bit arcane. Maybe you need a guide to figure out what you need to do to unlock all of them, and that can be a chore. That can be a little bit of a bummer. But if you take away that basic play the game, get a reward feedback loop, you're losing out on something. If everybody had the entire cast unlocked by default, they would be, first of all, they'd probably start going, well, now what do I do? Which eventually most people will do with all video games. But they'd be doing it within a week or two instead of a month or two later. And doing this gives the game time to generate its DLC. So by the time you've got most of the characters unlocked, maybe now is when Piranha Plant becomes available, and you can just download him and you'll have him. And maybe you won't like him as much as one of the characters you unlock. Maybe one of the original characters is one of your favorites. But allow games to unlock stuff. I don't think it does anybody any good for players to expect to have everything in a game unlocked by default as soon as they buy the game. Because in those situations, you're not playing the game, you're just having the game. And I want to have my game and play it. I'm Eric Spornitz, and tomorrow will be better.